Recently, we went back to the early days of beat-em-ups with Final Fight, the inspiration for Streets of Rage.
But even before Final Fight, there was Double Dragon, one of the most famous beat-em-ups of all time, released in arcades in 1987. We're playing it today on the Xbox Live Arcade with our Xbox 360.
Double Dragon is the story of two quote-unquote twin brothers, Billy and Jimmy Lee,
Or Hammer and Spike, depending on who you ask.
infamous on the streets of insert major city name here for their mad martial arts skills, who had to fight an evil gang called the Black Warriors to save a young woman of generous proportions named Marion.
The game opens with the Black Warriors punching Marion right in the stomach, then carrying her off with her skivvies in full view.
Holy crap! Right away, you know this game is badass. Double Dragon does not mess around.
As the Lee brothers, your goal is to rescue Marion by fighting off the Black Warriors using your kick-ass martial arts moves: punch, kick, and jump kick. Gang members beware.
There is one other move that actually is kick-ass, the skull-crushing elbow smash, performed by pressing punch and jump while facing away from an enemy. If you're facing the enemy, you'll just perform an awkward and ineffective jump kick.
Bam! This move is the most effective, most awesome move in any Double Dragon game. In fact, this version would be almost unplayable without it.
This game is hard. The enemies are tough and take forever to kill, even with the elbow smash. If we were playing this in a real arcade instead of the Xbox Live Arcade, I would have to spend like $50 in quarters to beat it.
Fun fact, if you haven't already purchased Double Dragon from the Xbox Live Arcade, you're out of luck, because it's no longer available. Okay, that wasn't a fun fact, that was more of a fail fact.
Another interesting move is the headbutt, performed by pressing direction twice. It's not all that effective, but we've never seen anything like it in any other beat-em-up, so it gets points for originality.
You can also pick up a wide variety of weapons like knives, bats, whips, barrels, boxes, dynamite, and boulders. And not rocks, but huge boulders.
Unfortunately, though, there is damage between players, so Double Dragon does not get the Chris and Jen beat-em-up seal of approval. Epic fail, Double Dragon.
You fight enemies who look just like Mr. T, and even an all-green version of Mr. T, whom we call Green T.
There's also a green version of Billy and Jimmy. Looks like they all shop at the same store.
The control of this game is awkward at best, and the hit detection is almost non-existent.
It's a fast-paced game. So fast the arcade system couldn't handle it, and as a result, there's tons of slowdown.
These issues combine for a perfect storm of frustrating gameplay, but at least it doesn't cost us any quarters.
You'd think the Xbox Live Arcade version would be improved, as the 360 can obviously handle a simple beat-em-up like this.
They do allow you to use enhanced graphics, sometimes called smoothing, which actually look way better. The original graphics are so pixely you can barely see what's going on. Ugh.
That's better. You fight through the generic city streets with puzzling messages plastered on the walls, like English Tier, Matin, Cell, and Scoop Moto. And look, a kitty!
There's a forest with a perilous bridge and hidden holes that you can fall into, and a creepy mansion with terrifying statues that poke you with spears, and bricks that jump out of the wall and knock you back.
The only way to get through the mansion is to get hit once, then try to run past all of the environmental hazards while you're still blinking.
The music sounds like it belongs in Aladdin for the Sega Genesis.
If you manage to make it to the end and defeat the Black Warriors, you then have to fight each other to the death, and the winner gets the girl.
Apparently, Billy, Jimmy, and Marion were in some kind of bizarre love triangle.
Every time I see you falling, I get down on my knees and pray. I'm waiting for that final moment. You say the words that I can't say.
Looks like Billy wins this time.
I think that's Jimmy.
Whatever. In 1988, Double Dragon was released on the NES, but we call this version Single Dragon because it's only one player. How can you have a game called Double Dragon about two brothers that's only one player?
Okay, so you can play two-player, but you have to trade off, so you end up with the Super Mario Bros. Effect. where one of you has to just sit and watch until the other one dies. Lame.
And it's not like they didn't have two-player technology. Look at Contra, which came out the same year. We know it was possible, so why didn't they do it?
The control and hit detection in this version are greatly improved, but due to the limitations of the NES controller, you have to press 2 buttons to jump.
While the control is improved, the graphics are not. I understand that the NES was only 8-bit, but couldn't they pick better colors? Everything is puke green and burnt sienna. It's like someone ate pea and lentil soup and barfed all over the screen. And look at these enemies. Some of them have purple hair that matches their pants.
Because Single Dragon is only one player, every time you die you have to start back at the beginning of the level, which makes it very time consuming and extremely hard to beat, especially because there's a timer. The timer is always running out, and when that happens, you die.
Also, because it's only one player, enemies are always surrounding you and turning you into a Jimmy sandwich.
Billy Sandwich.
Alright. Also in 1988, Double Dragon was released for the Sega Master System. And guess what? It's 2-player co-op. So the Master System, an 8-bit system like the NES, could have 2 players on the screen at the same time, but the NES couldn't? Fail, Nintendo.
Now the control for this version is kind of backwards. You punch with the 2 button, you kick with the 1 button, which are in the opposite positions of the NES's B and A buttons, so it takes some getting used to. As in the NES version, you still have to press both buttons to jump.
The graphics are very flickery, and there aren't many colors. It's almost like they couldn't use any earth tones, so they gave the blue guy red hair and the red guy blue hair. Some of the backgrounds look like I colored them in a DOS-based paint program. I feel like I'm playing a primitive Leisure Suit Larry game. Look, a box that says Sega.
But the music and sound effects are adorable, and look at how our characters walk. Cute.
The moves are the same, but even less effective. The only time I feel like I'm actually doing any damage is when I have a weapon. The best thing to do is just keep jump kicking back and forth, but as we all know, that can be tedious.
Certain parts of the game just seem broken. Sometimes you can just walk past the enemies and keep going without killing them, and after you clear the screen, it takes so long for more enemies to appear that it feels like the game froze.
Oh yeah, and there's still damage between players. Fail.
A Sega Genesis version of Double Dragon was released in 1992, but it was an unlicensed third-party cart.
Ooh. I feel so naughty playing this.
We're such outlaws.
This version is so super fast, it's like it's on crack. But you still had to go way too far to the right to advance the screen. That's dangerous. You never know what could be lurking beyond the confines of the screen.
The graphics look stretched out, like a VHS movie that's been formatted to fit your TV. But if you can change your TV to widescreen format, like we can, it actually looks normal. Pan and scan? Letterbox.
Again, the colors seem to be limited. The backgrounds are all terracotta with a little gray mixed in. Look, a terracotta kitty!
The moves are the same, but now you finally have a separate button for jump. Oh yeah, and there's still damage between players. More fail.
The hit detection is even worse than previous versions, as evidenced by the fact that our fight to death at the end took like 45 minutes because we couldn't get our blows to land.
As soon as I can line up with you, you're dead.
Double Dragon Advance was released in 2003 for the Game Boy Advance. It has much better graphics than previous versions, with more detail, larger sprites, and more normal-looking colors. It even has cutscenes.
The control and hit detection are a vast improvement over all previous releases, and there are a variety of new moves and weapons. You can now run, perform dash attacks, and even stop dudes while they're on the ground.
You can play this game 2-player if you have a link cable and a second copy of the game. Amazingly, there's no damage between players, so this game wins the Chris and Jen beat 'em up seal of approval.
And for the first time, we actually see the story of Billy and Jimmy's adventure in writing.
5 years ago, much of the world was destroyed in a nuclear war. Peace abruptly came to an end.
The setting is New York City, in the aftermath of the war.
Twin brothers live on the outskirts of town. They're twins? Okay. Their names are Billy and Jimmy Lee.
They manage a small kung fu gym where they train their students to survive in the hostile city.
One day, the Lee brothers receive a letter. If you want Marion back, bring us the secret book of Su Setsu Ken. Love, the Shadow Warriors. The Shadow Warriors? What happened to the Black Warriors?
They are the dominant criminal organization in New York. Their leader is a man named Willie?
Well, if it was up to me, I'd let you go. But the lads have a temper, and they've been drinking all day.
Billy, the time has finally come to put the skills we've learned from our master to the test. We'll surely come home safely. Forgive us for disobeying your teachings. Okay, what the hell is he on about?
They spoke to their late master silently in their hearts as they faced his portrait.
The battle has now begun. Finally.
This version actually adds some new levels that weren't in the original arcade version, making it longer than all of the previous releases.
At the end, you don't have to fight each other to decide who gets the girl, but the scene cuts before she kisses one of them, so I guess they're still in a love triangle.
In 1992, Super Double Dragon was released for the Super Nintendo. We're playing the Japanese version, Return of Double Dragon, because it's easier. Don't judge us.
This version is completely different from the arcade version. The settings are different, the enemies are different, and there's a wide range of new and different moves, although they're difficult to pull off.
It has a lot more cool weapons, an angry mode, which makes your moves way more powerful.
Billy and Jimmy, who now wears hot pink instead of red, are both very graceful. Most of the time, they look like they're ballet dancing.
She's a maniac, maniac on the floor. And she's dancing like she's never danced before. She's a maniac, maniac on the floor. And she's dancing like she's never danced before.
The gameplay is very slow, and even though the Japanese version is easier, it's still pretty damn hard. All the enemy attacks take away about half of your life, and they're always surrounding you.
The levels are confusing. Sometimes you're not sure where you're supposed to go to trigger the next group of enemies. Like on this stair level, where you climb all the way to the top, and then apparently you're supposed to go back down. The problem is there's no blinking hand telling us where to go. There should always be a blinking hand, like even in real life.
But the most puzzling thing about this version is that there doesn't seem to be any bosses, and if there are, there's no boss music to signify them. The same music just keeps going and going. It almost feels like you're playing one long level for the whole game.
Most of the new music is pretty bland, including yet another Spy Hunter theme ripoff. Really?
But there's this one really hot track that sounds like it belongs in an 80s buddy cop movie.
We couldn't beat the game because Chris's character froze, but we're pretty sure these results are not typical.
Double Dragon 2 is called The Revenge. Why? Because of this great moment in video game history.
And now, great moments in video game history. Today's great moment, Marion gets blown away at the beginning of Double Dragon 2 Arcade. Oh!
Let's see that again.
Oh! This has been Great Moments in Video Game History.
The graphics in Double Dragon 2 are slightly better than the first arcade game, but instead of the usual red guy, blue guy combo, our heroes are now clad in gray and slightly darker gray.
And the blinking hand that tells us where to go is now a lady's hand with red nail polish and a diamond ring. Classy.
You can move really fast until enemies appear on the screen. Then it's slow down city.
Look, cows and a shooting star.
Look at this dude busting through a brick wall. Remind you of anyone?
At the end, instead of fighting each other to the death, you fight shadow versions of yourselves, like Doppelganger in Captain Commando.
I guess you could say I'm my own worst enemy.
It's no surprise to me, I am my own worst enemy. 'Cause every now and then I kick the living shit out of me. The smoke alarm is going off and there's a cigarette still burning. Please tell me why.
The Shadow Us's take forever to beat, and when you finally beat them, somehow you manage to rescue Marion after all.
But we saw her get riddled with bullets at the beginning.
She came back from the dead?
Don't say it.
Who does she think she is?
Don't say it.
Jesus Christ!
And now it's time for a love-hate review. The NES version of Double Dragon 2 was released in 1990, but it takes place in 19XX.
I told you, in the year 19XX, it's all gonna hit the fan.
I love it. It has awesome music and some of the funniest cutscenes in any game ever. Hold it! You'll never escape from us! Grasp!
I hate it. The control is terrible, you get like no lives, and it's way too easy to fall off stuff and die.
I love all the different weapons you can use.
I hate that the weapons disappear when you kill the enemies that brought them.
I love all the cool moves you can do, like the uppercut and the roundhouse kick.
I hate how it's really complicated to pull off the cool moves, so you end up only doing them sometime by accident.
I love that the levels take place in so many different locations, like the inside of a helicopter.
I hate that in the helicopter level you can get sucked through the door and killed.
I love that you can make the bad guys get sucked through the door and killed.
I hate all the cheap stuff like spikes on the ceiling, conveyor belts, and disappearing platforms.
Touché.
Seriously, we have to end the game when we get to the Mansion of Terror because it's impossible to beat, even with a Game Genie.
Actually, I beat it once with a Game Genie. It just took a really long time. See this cool picture I took of the ending?
This has been a love-hate review.
Double Dragon 2 was followed by Double Dragon 3, the Rosetta Stone, in 1990. Then in 1991 by the NES version, The Sacred Stone, in which our heroes are infamously referred to as Jimmy and Bimmy. This sequel is extremely difficult, and you're expected to beat this game with only one life. That's indecent.
An original Game Boy version released in 1990 is now available mad cheap on the Virtual Console for the 3DS. It's similar to the NES version, but a little easier and more fun. Here's a picture of when Chris beat it.
Now, stay tuned for a sneak preview clip of our next review.
Teddy did it.